I'm back on my couch. This is a little different of a video actually than I usually do for these. Instead of just showing something off, I kind of want to do a first impressions video. And oh my god, it's a Nintendo Switch. Haha, just kidding. I got this recently. This is the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro by, I assume, the company Retroid. This is a Android-based little handheld system. It looks a lot like a Switch, I'm sure, is the first thing you're noticing. Um, but I have had this thing for like a week now. I got it used online. It was somebody who had just not even barely opened it. I guess he didn't expect it not to have games on it or something. He told me. Regardless, I've been wanting one of these for a while. I've been wanting something like this for a while. But I want to do a first impressions video, not only for the Retroid Pocket for itself, but also just for like one of these devices in general, because there's a lot of them on the market. There's a lot of options people have for one of these. So, for people who don't know what this thing is, this is basically an Android phone with a controller setup built in. It runs an Android OS, and it's primarily people use it for emulators. A lot of emulators are able to be downloaded on Android, and you're able to do tons of fun, fancy things with this thing. And you can also use it as a streaming device, like streaming your PC games to this thing. There's a lot of options when it comes to Android. Android's kind of just like a little like computer operating system. But you're also kind of limited with Android, so I'm going to go through my experience a little bit, setting this thing up, what it was like, and this thing itself. So I'll do that first. I'll get the actual device itself out of the way. This thing is so nice. Like, build quality, it is amazing. So for some background, when I was at PAX East a few months ago, there was somebody I talked to that had one of these, and he let me use it for just a few minutes while we were just chilling, because I was so curious about it, because I'd seen so many videos about these things. And I was like instantly in love with it. Like, the weight and the feel in my hands felt like pretty much pitch perfect, if that's a good way to put it. I love the Switch Lite. I have had the Switch Lite pretty much ever since it came out. I basically opted to only have the Switch Lite instead of a normal Switch, and I love that thing. That thing is one of the most comfortable handhelds I've ever used. But it's not that big a deal because I didn't really have context for it at the time. I didn't really realize that it's like a teensy bit too big for me. I'm used to Game Boys, I'm used to DSs from back in the day, so I like smaller form factors. And if you can tell, it's kind of hard to get a size comparison here. This is the size of a Switch Lite. This thing fits flush with a Switch Lite, and this is like, a little bit smaller than a Switch Lite. It's pretty much in between a PlayStation Vita and a Switch Lite, I'd say, in terms of sizing. The buttons feel amazing. The triggers feel like really nice. There's this they are analog triggers, so there's a really nice kind of like, sort of like give to it, kind of has that like springy give, which is so nice. Very clicky buttons, which I have been told is a problem for some, but I actually kind of like how clicky they are. I'm used to clicky buttons, and I like that. And I will say, one of the X factors in terms of this build, the analog sticks are incredible. They're hold sensor, which are the magnet analog sticks that should not have drift like other analog, like the plastic, membrane analog sticks. These things feel amazing, and they're really nice quality sticks. They're not just like shitty little Switch ones. They're like, I don't know, there's something about these that are extremely nice. In terms of build quality, this thing is actually really surprising how good it is. I knew it was going to be pretty good because, it's a premium product. By the way, these things retail for $200. So, but, all things considered, I'm going to be telling you what this thing can run, and you're going to be kind of like, whoa, that's pretty impressive for a handheld at all, let alone a $200 handheld. And I'm not going to lie, the build quality has completely put it over the edge for me in terms of it being worth it. This thing is built like a beast, IMO, and it's pretty impressive stuff in that way. And like, that is just a perk of, on top of it being a pretty nice little handheld Android device. So It has headphone jack. It uses micro SD card. Surprise. And sorry about um, the focus, but you know. And it's got its fan on the back. This thing can get a little loud, but not too crazy. It's got the exhaust on the top, just like the Switch. It has a micro HDMI, which I should be getting on Amazon today. So I can kind of set this thing up like a little console. And this thing can also, along with charging, you can get a USB to USB female adapter thing and plug in controllers and use controllers on this thing. It pretty much does anything a little Android Raspberry Pi device or anything, or I guess Raspberry Pis don't run Android, but an Android device could do. What's something that ran Android? Did the NVIDIA Shield run Android? I don't remember. Probably not. Anyway, so that's that. This thing, it looks really nice, feels really nice in the hands, and it does come in a few colors. I was actually really lucky because I found this on Facebook Marketplace of all places, coincidentally, totally coincidental, that I just saw it within driving distance, and I was like, wow, I've been wanting one of these, and it's like half the price it usually is. So I got very lucky with that. But yeah, I was just gonna say, the colors, yes, this one has kind of like a Super Famicom kind of style to it. You can get one with a more Super Nintendo style to it, where it has the gray is a little bit more blue, and it has purple buttons like a Super Nintendo controller. I may have gone with that one, but this was my second choice. You can get them in some translucent colors too, old Game Boy translucent. I think it would be nice, but I don't love the way the translucent color looks, at least judging by the website images. And then you can get black, just a black one, which is nice too. This one was probably one of my first choices though. So how about we get into what this thing actually does? So I spent a lot of time configuring this thing. So I'm going to kind of try to explain what's going on in this while I, get it trying to focus on the actual screen. Come on. All right. So you don't need to see it. This can all be dark. You want to see the actual thing. So I've spent a lot of time setting up this thing to have various emulators. I've tested a lot of them. I am not a connoisseur when it comes to emulation configuration. I am not the best person for this. There are probably people who would have a better idea of this, but I want to give my experience as somebody who has been wanting something that can run games. I wanted basically an all-in solution for most games if I wanted to play them handheld, because I have so many video games that I collect. I have so many handhelds that I have that can technically run emulation, like my 3DS and my PlayStation Vita and even my phone. So what does this serve me as whatever? So it can run a lot of things. I have 21 different platforms that I've been testing. There's a few that I didn't really get too much time to test. It can, yeah, you're seeing this right. It can run 3DS games. So far, I think the sweet spot for this system has been 6th generation systems, which is GameCube and PS2. That has been the most impressive thing about this, and the most what I've wanted from one of these for so long is it can run GameCube and PlayStation 2 mostly flawlessly from my experience, with some tweaking involved, but GameCube especially has been almost entirely flawless with no configuration, completely plug and play, ran pretty much anything I threw at it almost flawlessly. So but there's a lot of things this thing can do. As you can see, it can also play 3DS games. Personally, I've tried a few. Personally, I don't really know if the 3DS is really a viable reason to get this thing. Maybe if you don't have a 3DS, this would be useful, but a 3DS is probably a third of the price of this thing, and you can easily mod a 3DS and get every game you want on the 3DS easily, and it's a way better platform for something like that. This doesn't really fit any kind of niche for me. It's if I want to play a 3DS game, I'll just play it on my 3DS. And same goes for DS. Dreamcast games run amazing on this thing. Oop, I didn't mean to click that. Dreamcast games run great. I didn't realize how well optimized Dreamcast emulation is these days, but these games run pretty much flawlessly. The Redream emulator is a little sparse on settings. I'm going to get into that a little bit later about what I did to configure all of these kind of cohesively. But the Dreamcast emulator is a little sparse in terms of configuration. You can't really do much with like video settings or anything or resolution, but they look nice. Sonic Adventure looks nice. That's the main one I was testing, but I do want to get it gives me an excuse to try some of these games. And I'll get into the UI thing too, this whole UI front end, which was really interesting to compile. I have a bunch of Game Boy games. I was pretty much just getting compilations of games recently. You can also, on this program, you can kind of style it where you can have like this. And this thing is touchscreen. Like I said, it's basically an Android phone, so there's a lot of options. Game Boy Advanced, I have a ton of Game Boy Advance games. I was just pretty much just going through a complete list and just getting any of them that I felt like I might want to play, which is a lot of shovelware, which is kind of embarrassing. Game Boy Color games, the shebang. And then we have GameCube, which again is a big reason why I got this. I only have a few downloaded right now because they take up a lot of room, and I just haven't had the time. But the things I've tested, everything has ran pretty much flawlessly. Sonic Adventure 2, I tried to do the widescreen patch, and it started stuttering. I don't think that's a problem with the emulation. It's more of it's a problem with my device's like power. It's more of a problem with the emulator not really cooperating with the patch. But everything pretty much runs pretty well. Like, for example, I'm just going to start up Smash Bros. Melee, which I don't know if this is like a great, test of this, but I was pretty impressed. And there's something super novel about being able to play like a GameCube game on a little handheld like this. Like, it's probably the novelty's probably not like the most insane. I'm sure some people are like, oh well, I can do this on my phone, who cares? But there's something so cool about like just being able to start this shit up and just wave dash as Fox on FD. Ready? Oh, you don't have FD in the beginning. It's okay. We got Fountain Dreams. Yeah, there's always a little stuttering. See, look, I can wave dash on a Retroid Pocket 4. Isn't that cool? Yeah, you get the idea. And again, I will explain the sort of little nuances to this thing in a bit, but because there's some weird things. So GameCube runs great. Genesis obviously runs great. Anything pre-Generation 6, you don't have to worry about. It all runs basically flawlessly. These don't even have things. I will say though, I can get into this now. So pretty much for everything that is like pre-GameCube, I have it running through. So this is a front-end emulator. For those who don't know what that is, this is just basically a program that's telling it to open the emulators. So, and it's just really nice looking. So basically, you just give it a file path, like a folder in your computer or your Android phone in this matter, and you just tell it, hey, read all of my games and use your database to make a big list of them. And when you click Scooby-Doo Mystery whatever, it will just open up the ROM and the emulator immediately. And these are all running through RetroArch, these older systems. And RetroArch has a lot of options, which is really nice, but it doesn't run everything great. The one thing I really wanted to make sure it looked nice, so I kind of did like a blur effect in the background of these games. I gave it kind of... there's a lot of logos in the beginning of this game. I don't know if this is a Scooby-Doo game. I can't really tell what this looks like right now. I think I gave it like kind of like a sort of like a running through a CRT composite signal, which is a video filter you can use. Nice thing about the Retroid is those video filters can be pretty intensive on emulation devices. Even like on my Vita, if I tried to crank up some, filters over like a Super Nintendo or Genesis game, it'd start actually lagging a little bit. This thing is powerful enough to not have to worry about any of that. So you can put on whatever filters. I literally have like basically the game multiplied behind it, like, with the blur. So surprisingly enough, it's running pretty much normally, or, as normal as you can get it. The best way to kind of exit the games is usually to go and just exit out of RetroArch, and I'll just bring you back over here. So yeah, I tried to make it look cohesive. So like, if I were to go to Game Boy games and let's play Clax. Clax is cool. It does a similar thing where it's got the, the thing around it. It's got a kind of slightly blurred, quote unquote, slightly composite looking signal over the actual game. Sometimes I think that however people want to experience is fine. I like this because it just looks a little bit more authentic to what it would look like on a maybe playing it on a TV in this case. But there wasn't a great filter for Game Boy games IMO. They looked a little cheesy or a little like the resolution sometimes a little weird. But so configuring these emulators has been the most time-consuming part of this. And the only reason I'm doing this video now instead of a few days ago is because I wanted to make sure everything was configured before I showed it off. And there's a lot of tweaking. You have to like and appreciate tweaking settings and troubleshooting to get a lot of use out of this thing. I will say, fair warning for anyone who might want to buy this. That is a big part of this. It has been going into RetroArch, setting configuration files to certain, like, you can set basically setting configuration files to the file path. So anything opened up in my Game Boy folder is going to configure a certain type of settings, which, is all those little things that I have and the controller settings and everything. And, you kind of have to do that for every single emulator, and it's definitely not the easiest thing in the world to figure out. But then other emulators, like the GameCube emulator, this isn't running through RetroArch. This is just running through Dolphin. And I think you can pass it through RetroArch as well, but, like, Dolphin's already pretty intensive to run. If you're passing it through basically this and RetroArch, you're just gonna lose some fidelity, or you'll lose some performance there. And same goes for N64. N64 is actually probably one of the hardest ones to configure. Finding the right application is difficult too. So when you're setting these up, you can pretty much tell this program to find a certain app here. That's the player settings, and they have a list of a bunch. What did I just do? They have a list of a bunch here. So, if I was doing 3DS, I would select Lime 3DS, which is the software that, Citra is for Android. The N64 one that at first was kind of skeptical on getting like a self-contained N64 emulator, but the one that's on the Play Store that's like $5 or whatever is definitely the best one and the one you should use. It's weird that these days, just such a foreign concept to me, but it makes sense that like emulators cost money on Android, but they are kind of worth it, especially if you want to use these things for these platforms. Like, $5 goes a long way, especially when these run so well. I'm actually really surprised. After I got everything configured, N64 is one of the better running game systems, I think, in terms of just consistency and like no problem, especially for an N64 emulator. N64 emulation is not easy, so this one, you can kind of tell. It's probably hard to tell. It kind of has like a curved edge. Like it almost looks like a CRT. It's pretty subtle. I wasn't even sure if I was going to keep it like this. It's something, It makes it look a little bit more authentic. There's not really any great CRT filters or kind of like composite, NTSC, whatever filters on this N64 emulator, but that's okay. That's something that's nice about RetroArch is there's a lot of like, you can download plugins, you can download shaders and everything. But for some emulators like this Mupen emulator, there's not a ton of options. You basically have whatever the emulator wants you to have. So I have DS games on here. I don't really think I'm ever going to play DS games on this thing. You can kind of just imagine why. You have to have the screens next to each other, and they don't scale well, and it just isn't the solution. If you have a DSi, you can pretty much you can get Twilight menu, which is a homebrewed menu for a DSi. You can download whatever you want. You can just run games like through NDS files on that thing, and that's a real ass DS you're playing it on. DS is one of those systems that's always going to be very, very hard to emulate because touchscreen, dual screens, it's very hard. Maybe I could play it like that, but that probably wouldn't be comfortable either. NES, classic. I mean, of course, this is going to work well. I don't think I have to even tell you that. PlayStation 2 was a big one for me. I am so genuinely taken back at how well these games run on here. I've had a few issues. For example, like Jak and Daxter doesn't run very well. Sly Cooper has some issues, but I think there are settings and configurations and even possibly another emulator you could try to like kind of fix the ones that don't work. But like, for example, I just want to show you something baffling to me as a casual consumer of these things. I also recommend finding the BIOS files so you can have the startups like this, which is nice. Yeah, you can display things like I have the speed percentage on the top, which is pretty convenient to know if I'm getting any slowdown. Um, but I'm just mind blown that I can play PlayStation 2 games handheld like this. It's a system that felt for so long felt so impossible to emulate well, like on my computer, let alone on a system like this. An Android based handheld system is pretty bonkers. Um, that is kind of the coolest thing about this is if you're like in the market for an emulation system, I think like this is a pretty good value considering what it does. But like, I mean, look at this. I'm just like I was very blown away when I downloaded this game specifically. This is a late PS2 game. It's got a lot going on in terms of like, its aesthetics and everything, all the effects that are happening. It's just casually doing this, no issue. I will say, so Android, you can, you know, do a whole Android thing. There's actually a nice thing that these have where you can change the fan speed and the performance, basically configuration. It will save on battery if you have lower performance and stuff. But for this, you can actually set it per app. So when it runs this PS2 app, it's running at a higher performance. You can, not sure if you can hear that, but the fan is definitely going. It's getting a workout. But this is so neat to me. This is one of the biggest things for me. And there's a lot of PlayStation 2 games I've been wanting to play. There's a lot of this era of games that I haven't really had a chance to play because I'm not gonna lie, sometimes sitting at my computer or my couch and playing a game on a TV is not really the ideal way for me. I like having it being able to lay in bed. I like being able to sit on the couch and chill in any, you know, configuration I want holding one of these things. And I also for in all intents and purposes, I loved handheld gaming growing up. So this is way more my speed in terms of playing a game. It's more nostalgic. It feels more like comfy in a way, which is cool. I didn't think how much I would value this until I got it in my hands, really, in terms of this, like in terms of that way, where it's like I didn't think I'd value how useful this thing will be. And granted, I have not played a full game on this yet. I've been just kind of messing with games. One of the first games I want to play is Boku no Natsuyasumi 2, which got a cool, which got a English translation. But so far, everything's been running pretty well. Some cool games. Guitar Man I've never played. I've wanted to play. The Sky Odyssey game I've heard is pretty good. God Hand, I've heard that game's all right. But yeah, it feels like I have a lot of freedom with that. And another thing, this thing is immaculate at playing PSP games. This might be one of the best ways to play a PSP game, in my opinion. For all of these emulators, by the way, I can run basically every PS2 game at ×2 resolution. GameCube, you can bust it up to like 4 times resolution if you really wanted to. I'm sure you would probably not see performance dips at 4 times resolution. And the same with PSP. You could bust this thing up to bajillion times resolution. But PSP games look pretty damn good at a higher resolution. I was kind of surprised. They fill the screen all the way. I'm sure that's a question, is like in terms of filling the screen. A widescreen game fills the screen, obviously. But the configuration is perfect for a PSP. It just feels really good. If this is a good replacement for a PSP as well, where it's like, I have a PSP and a bunch of games. I'll probably keep it because, I've been collecting this stuff, but it would be a good replacement. I'm not going to lie. PlayStation 1 games run perfectly fine. They're actually running through DuckStation, not RetroArch, so I don't have the same configuration as the others. But so far, everything I've thrown at it is fine. I like how that reboot game says Bugs Bunny for some reason. Not sure why. Sega Saturn was a big one for me. I really wanted to get Sega Saturn games to work. I was trying to configure it for a long time. Turned out I just had the wrong BIOS files, which is a little frustrating. But I recently got this working, and everything runs really well. Not too surprising considering how old Sega Saturn is, or how it's like a 32-bit system. But I will say emulation for Sega Saturn has come a long way, because when I was like getting into emulation back in the day, you could not emulate Sega Saturn games. That was a total pipe dream. So that's pretty cool. Sega CD I haven't tested yet, but I assume it'll be fine. Super Nintendo, have a bunch of games on here for Super Nintendo. Surprise, runs fine. Switch games, yeah. this thing can run Nintendo Switch games. That has actually been a big talking point with this thing. If you look up a lot online, Retroid Pocket 4, a lot of people are just kind of going through a bunch of games to see what runs, like Switch game wise. These are not the right icons. I've tried two games. I've tried ARMS, and this is Unicorn Overlord, which is like a new Switch game. Um, they run okay. I was a little disappointed by Unicorn Overlord because I thought it was going to run better, but it's a little slow. Probably have to configure it. ARMS runs almost good enough. It lags a little too much, especially in the slightly bigger stages. But all things considered, it was running decently well. I want to try Mario Wonder because I've heard Mario Wonder you can get running pretty well on this, which is pretty neat. It's not flawless, mainly because Yuzu is not perfect on this thing, and they stopped development on it. So it's Android. Like, this thing doesn't have the same processor that the Switch has in its like form factor, but it is using Android, so it doesn't have to be like super duper powerful to run it. But I've heard some lightweight Switch games run all right. You're not going to run Breath of the Wild easily. You're not going to run like Xenoblade 2 or whatever. But maybe something along the lines of something like Unicorn Overlord, which is a 2D game, might run all right. Nice solution. I do plan on modding my Switch one day, so like this probably won't be my solution for my Switch games if I wanted to play something. But it is nice to have an option for like indie games, I guess. Like if I wanted to transfer, I had to mod my Switch to do it. But if I wanted to transfer a Switch game to this, it'd be nice. It's just another option, which is nice. All in one kind of thing. Haven't tried either TurboGrafx. I think I have one of these, but it wasn't working, so I think I have the BIOS files wrong or something. And then you can play PlayStation Vita games. I haven't tested this yet. I've heard it's hit or miss. The Vita emulator on Android I've heard is so I'm not like too convinced. But I'm sure it'll be good enough, I'm sure. That was one of the things that the person I was talking to at PAX was showing me, and I thought that was a huge thing. I was like, wow, the Vita games are running surprisingly well, but I know the library is weird and emulation's still in early stages. And then Wii games. I just got this configured yesterday. Wii games actually run extremely well. I was playing Brawl, perfect full frames. I just leave it to Dolphin. Dolphin is just immaculately good at running things. It's pretty bizarre, but I thought it'd be cute to have some Wii games. It's just one of those things that's like surprising. The only thing I haven't configured yet is I haven't figured out how to make the touchscreen the cursor. I don't know if you can. I'll try to figure that out. But yeah, that's pretty much all the emulators and the use case for the emulators. For me, as a more casual person that just wanted these, this has been so nice to be able to have such a big library of games being handheld. It's like, I'm sure you could get Wii games and GameCube games running on like a phone or something, but the form factor is so comfy. Like I said, the build quality is incredible, so it's just been such a nice little way to play these things, and it's been really surreal in some ways to be able to play like something like a PlayStation 2 game or something on this little thing. I don't know why. It's just like I haven't been catching up with technology much, so it's been kind of like surprising that I can do that. Which probably to some it's like that's pretty silly because like of course it can. We're in 2024. Like what'd you expect? But as somebody who is just a collector of video games and not really somebody who is into the tech side of stuff, this is really cool, and I do recommend it to anybody who can afford it. It's a little bit of an investment in terms of price, like $200 is not cheap, plus shipping, and you need to get an SD card, and you need to get little accessories like, little converter to USB if you want to do anything else with it. But there are a lot of options here, and considering like what you get in terms of like what it's worth, like you think about your phone. I don't know if for the people that pay for their phones, an Android phone, like a Samsung phone, is expensive, and a lot of it comes down to the fucking camera. But like, even the device itself and what's packed into this thing, I don't know exactly the value of like the graphics card and the CPU that's in this. But like, if I were to get a phone that would be this powerful, I would expect to pay somewhere between at least $400 these days for a phone like that. And I would expect if it didn't have a camera to pay a similar amount as well. But the fact that this is $200 with a nice touchscreen, with a nice controller layout, with an immaculately good build quality, is pretty impressive. I don't really have a nice... There is a pretty good guide on YouTube, which I will link, to setting all of this up. But pretty much for those who care, this is called... what is this called? Oh, man. What the hell is this app called? This is called... Let me see. Oh, no. It says right there. Daijisho. Daijisho is the front end, and you can configure these pictures to be anything. You can download like is it navigation, or wait, maybe not navigation, library. It's somewhere in here. You can pretty much download like the way this all appearance probably yeah, you can download a bunch of different packs for appearances to make it change how it looks. I like this one a lot. This is the one that the guy that I watched recommended. Retro Game Corpse is his name. Course? I don't know. He recommended this Pop one, which I do really like. I think it looks really nice and it looks really slick. You can set Android to launch into immediately this program, so when you press the home button, it just goes right back to the main screen. You can add widgets to the widgets scene, so if I want to run Dolphin by itself or anything, or you want to see something crazy that you can run on Android nowadays, this is Ship of Harkinian, which is the native PC port of Ocarina of Time. I don't know if my video is in 60 FPS, but running Ocarina of Time in 60 FPS is the most bizarre thing in the entire universe. And if you haven't messed with this, it's super easy to get working. You just need like a Zelda ROM, and you just like run a program and tell it where it goes. This is an amazing way to play Ocarina of Time. Period. There's a lot of settings too. You can, set up a randomizer right in the menu. You can set the controls. You can, do cheats. You can do restoration stuff. And they're working on Majora too. So this is going to be so cool. So one kind of little quirk thing to keep in mind too is when you close a game, when you like go back to the menu, it doesn't really close the game. So the only way to really close it would be to go into like the up menu, like on a phone, and just, exit these. Was running all this stuff. I don't really like having it running in the background. I don't know if it takes up anything at all. I don't know if it takes up any CPU usage or anything, but And then you have Moonlight, which is the streaming thing that I could stream from my computer. So I could easily play a PC game, and Moonlight is incredible. I was so blown away by that because, cloud gaming and stuff has always been kind of a sour note for me. But I was really surprised at how good Moonlight is at playing games. I was playing like Final Fantasy XIV. But yeah, I think that pretty much does it for what I wanted to talk about. I really wanted to just kind of showcase this. I had a lot of questions and concerns and like skepticism when it came to one of these devices. I wasn't sure how much use I'd get out of it. I wasn't sure what it would do for me as a video gamer. But I think I was being woefully too paranoid. This thing is amazing, and it is amazing just on a base level. It is just a cool piece of tech. So like it's running Android, so it has so many options. So like if you have, and there are other, by the way, there are other handheld options. Retroid is only one of many. I mean, like the Steam Deck technically fills a similar purpose to this, except the Steam Deck is like, 3 times bigger than this thing. That was the biggest thing with a Steam Deck, was I thought it was way too big. But there's a lot of options. There's like a company called Powkitty that does them. There's one, I know the guy that I was watching, he really likes this one called the Odin, which is a similar amount of, I think, like power fidelity. But for what it's worth, I think this thing is a great deal, a great value, and has been surprisingly fun to mess with. Be prepared to do a lot of configuration, though. You have to kind of like that part of it. But if you do, it's fun. The tutorial on how to get this all working is like an hour and a half long, so be prepared for that. But once you get it working, it's very cool. It's very much worth it. But yeah, if you like this video, let me know. I like doing these kind of off-the-cuff videos. And this is very different than what I usually do, but who cares? It's a video. You enjoy me talking, right? That's all you're here for. And Sailor Venus, right? That's all you're here for. But yeah, let me know if you have one of these or anything adjacent to these and how you like it, or if you if you were thinking about getting one and this is like the straw that's breaking the camel's back for you to spend $200 USD. But yeah, until next time, hopefully I can get a video out soon enough. I'm kind of been on the video struggling train, but that's not for this video. I'll talk about that some other time. Anyway, goodbye.